What is going on a Monday? I hope you guys are doing well here on the Jmull Show, 110sportsmedia.com/live. Well, not live today, having some technical difficulties here around the house. So it's just at 110sportsmedia.com. Thank you so much for joining us, whether it's today, where it's Monday, August 3rd, whether it's tomorrow, Tuesday, August 4th, whenever you might be watching, whenever you might be listening. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day and a part of the beginning of your week. We very much appreciate it. We got new stories at 110sportsmedia.com this morning, and sports are in full force. So we've got new sports to talk about, new sports to write about, rather than just reminiscing, which is the majority of what we've been doing the last month and a half or so. So thank you so much for joining us here today on the Jmull Show. Recorded, not live, unfortunately, but hey, it happens, and we'll make it through. I want to set the agenda for us real quick today. A lot happened this weekend on all fronts. We're going to talk about basketball today. We're going to talk about college football today, and we're going to talk about Major League Baseball today. A lot's happened in all three. Let me set the agenda for you. In 20 minutes or so in the second segment of the show, we're going to talk Pac-12 football players, basically setting a list of guidelines that need to be met if they're going to participate in fall camp and play in games in the fall for Pac-12. We're going to talk about what this means, what they actually are demanding, how realistic is it, what does this mean for college athletics, and what does it just mean for the definition of college and amateur athletics at the college football level. What could this steamroll into, so on and so forth. We'll break that down here in about 20 minutes. Yoenis Cespedes ghosted the Mets. He just said, I'm not. He didn't even say anything. He just left and then let his agent tell the team halfway through their game against the Braves that he was opting out of the season due to COVID-related issues. I don't blame him for opting out for COVID-related issues after what's happened with Major League Baseball in the last week or so, but it's a little iffy how he decided to go about it, so we'll talk about that in about 40 minutes. So then we'll get some FYI going and get out of here. But what I want to start with is the NBA. We had a lot happen this weekend. A lot of teams played, but honestly, not a whole lot of shifting in the standings compared to where we started at the beginning of the restart. So let me break it down for you. We'll look at the conference standings here real quick. So we've got pretty much everything stayed the same in the East except a couple things. Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, Miami. The top four stayed the same. Indiana and Philly technically stayed the same. They were tied. Indiana won that game, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But Indiana staying ahead now, a game ahead of Philly for the 5 seed rather than being tied. Orlando 7 and Brooklyn 8 now. Brooklyn half a game back of Orlando, and Washington now 7 games back in the East, and they are officially out of it. I don't know if that's actually true. It might be. I guess if they're 7 games out of it and Brooklyn's played twice already, right? I think that's right. I think Brooklyn's played twice already. Then they don't have enough games. So that's not surprising. The Wizards came and were basically irrelevant. In the Western Conference, the Lakers and Clippers both went 1-1 this over the weekend. Denver still in third. Houston jumping from 6th to 4th, tied with Utah. Utah has not looked good. We'll get to that here in a minute as well. Dallas in 7, and then Memphis at 8, with several teams getting closer and closer to their heels. But let's break it down just a little bit further. So that's the standings right now. That's where we're sitting when it comes to the Eastern and Western Conference standings. I think we're not going to see a ton of movement. And I don't know if I've talked about this on the show. I've definitely talked about it on the Jays for Days podcast, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement just because teams are trying to figure things out, trying to get their feet wet again, getting reacclimated to game speed, and that's just going to result in a lot of inconsistencies. Like you see at the beginning of a lot of seasons, and even though this is technically the same season, the length of time between March 11th and July 31st and July 30th was roughly the same amount of time as the end of an NBA Finals and the beginning of a new season in October. Roughly the same. So the point being is that it's been 4 months since these guys played in an actual NBA game together on the floor, and that means something. And there's a reason that you don't see a whole lot of teams get off to perfect starts at the beginning of the regular season. You see teams go start 4-4, start 5-3. Even if that's not necessarily indicative of who they are as basketball teams for that season, they're just still trying to figure things out. And I think that's the case here. We're going to see a lot of 5-3s, a lot of 4-4s, maybe a couple 6-2s. But going 7-1, I think would be impressive, and certainly 8-0 is something that I don't expect to see. But that's the point being is that what we saw in the standings prior to the 8 seeding games. I think is going to be fairly similar, and there's not going to be a whole lot of jump just because there's not a whole lot that can be done in 8 games anyway. Much less when I think that everyone's going to be 5-3, between 3-5 and 5-3. Essentially, is what I would bet on, and a couple teams who play well go 6-2. But the Lakers and Clippers, they both went 1-1. But Denver, who only played once, lost. So the Clippers now have a 2-game cushion on the 3 seed. So the Clippers still 5.5 games back of the Lakers in the 1-2. But Denver's now 7.5 games back of the Lakers. And Denver was at 1 point 7 games back of the Lakers. So you had only a 1.5 lead there for the Clippers. Now they have a 2-game lead, which is not unimportant here with only 6 games left or so. The Denver actually has 7 games left. They haven't played twice. They only played once over the weekend. So that you just sort of have built a little bit more of a cushion there for the LA teams. Indiana beat the Sixers, so now they're a game ahead of them in the 5th spot, like I talked about. TJ Warren had 53 points. We need to relax about the Pacers being a sleeper team in the East. They're just not good enough without Sabonis, and quite frankly, you should beat the Sixers by way more than 6 points when TJ Warren has 53. We're talking about if TJ Warren had 45 points, they lose the game. I refuse to feel great about the Pacers just because TJ Warren had 53. Now, TJ Warren is very good, but he's not 53 good. Nobody in the NBA is 53 good on a consistent basis. Nobody. And certainly not TJ Warren. I mean, we'll see just how good he can be and how consistent he could be, but we're talking about, this team that doesn't have their second best player in Domas Sabonis, and Victor Oladipo. Nobody really knows what's going through his head. He didn't play phenomenal in their first game. So I refuse to get all that hyped up about this. I refuse. It's just a waste of time to get all hyped up about a team that's just not healthy enough and not good enough to make any noise, even when they were healthy, to be quite honest with you. But with that being said, they did beat the Sixers 127-121. The stat lines in that game were ridiculous. I told you TJ Warren had 53 points, 9 of 12 from the 3-point line. Aaron Holiday played really well and continues to show why he should probably get more playing time even when Oladipo is there. He had 15 points and 10 assists. Oladipo was 15 points on 6 of 14 shooting. That's not exactly something to write home about. Joel Embiid, 41 points, 21 rebounds. That's ridiculous. That's a lot of rebounds. Ben Simmons, 19 and 13. Solid game from him as well. But and Tobias Harris had 30 points. But apart from that, there's very little scoring. Al Horford only had 10 points. Alec Burks was the second. Apart from those big 3 guys, was the second leading scorer. Shake Milton, 0 points, 5 personal fouls, 3 assists, and 19 minutes. Listen, it's an underestimated part of this that Shake Milton's played like 50 total NBA games. I think it was like 20 last year and 32, 33, I guess now this year. He's played 50 NBA games, and you want him to be your starting point guard. And it's not like he's played 50 NBA games because he's only been in the league for 50 games. I mean, he didn't play very much last year, and he hasn't played very much this year. I get that there are some things that could be helpful with Ben Simmons being power forward, but then you have to... Shake Milton has to be your point guard. Why would you want Shake Milton to be your point guard? This is an underrated part of this. 0 points, took 1 shot, 5 fouls. Not good enough. Especially when, the stick for Milton is that he's also a really nice 3-point shooter. He ain't taking threes. He took 1 3. Missed it. Took 1 3 and missed it. Poor. And something that I don't think we can overlook in terms of that Sixers roster is who's playing that point guard position. Because if your point guard is somebody like, I'm not going to use Aaron Holiday like that's a world beater or anything, but, you got your Aaron Holidays, your... go down the list of non-ball dominant point. Even like somebody like Monte Morris from the Nuggets, I'd feel better about. He's a much better player than Shake Milton is, in my opinion. Just, get a non-ball dominant point guard. DJ Augustine. Somebody like that to put in that position. Then I'd definitely feel even better about that. But Shake Milton... I feel right about that one. Milwaukee went 1-1. Boston went 1-1. Toronto and Miami only played once, both winning their games. Toronto looked really impressive against the Lakers. Houston has now beat the Mavericks and the Bucks to jump OKC and sit tied with the Jazz. The Jazz did not look good. The Jazz don't have enough scoring. They're way too dependent on ball handling. There's just no off-the-ball scores. It just looks so difficult for them to score on the offensive end right now. They're going to lose whichever playoff series they play in, and it could get kind of ugly for the Jazz in the bubble because it did not look good. They got absolutely smoked by Oklahoma City over the weekend after barely squeaking out a win over the Pelicans. Memphis is 0-2. Lucky for them, the Pelicans lost twice. Blazers lost once, but Spurs won twice, including a win against the Grizzlies. And now they're the team closest to the Grizzlies. They sit alone in the 9 seed. Memphis should be 2-0. They should. They had a double-digit lead against Portland. Dillon Brooks fouling a shooter at the buzzer like there was anything else for him to do other than shoot, and he bit on the pump fake. I don't understand how you make that mistake at that point in the game. It's just we're remembering right now that the Grizzlies are still an incredibly young basketball team, and it's like people forgot that. 4 months didn't change anything. Yes, they're an incredibly talented basketball team, and they have an incredibly bright future. But they're still so young. And Dillon Brooks, I like Dillon Brooks. I do. Lots of good things happen when he's on the basketball floor, but he doesn't think. And unfortunately, he's got too much confidence. He takes too many bad shots. He's not a great defender. Not even kinda. But he thinks he is. And he gets all upset. He gets in his head. And he just makes stupid mistakes. They all make stupid mistakes. And they should be 2-0. They should. And should be far and away in control of the 8 seed. But they're not. They're 0-2. And now you've got the Spurs, who are 2 games back, and the Blazers, who are, I believe, 3 games back now. Maybe 2.5 games back. The point being is that they did not look good. So that's where we stand now in the NBA. I want to get to a couple of my biggest takeaways. A lot of them have to do with some of the best teams in the NBA, but we'll start with the Bucks. The Bucks need more balanced scoring. One player, not named Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Brook Lopez, scored in double figures in their first 2 games. Against the Rockets, Dante DiVincenzo had 9 points, but he was the only other guy other than those 3 to have more than 5. Yes, their defense is spectacular, And yes, Giannis is incredible, but we saw what Giannis looked like when he had all the pressure on him to score in the playoffs last year. And it wasn't great. They need scoring to come from somewhere else. Just like the other best team, the team leading the Western Conference, we'll get to them in a second. But you need more consistent scoring from players to take the pressure off of those guys. You just have to. And we'll see if they get it. But you need George Hill to be the 50% 3-point shooter he was prior to the suspension. You need Kyle Korver to come in and knock down shots. You need players to be better. Because then you get to the point where you've got a relatively similar Bucks team from last year. And that Bucks team from last year didn't win a title. And they didn't get all that close. And maybe it'll change it when they get Bledsoe back. But Wesley Matthews, 2 of 7 from 1 of 6 from the field, 3 points. DiVincenzo, 4 of 10 for 9 points. And that was it. Nobody off the bench had more than 5. That's not good enough. And I'm not betting on Eric Bledsoe in the playoffs. Not a chance. The Bucks need more scoring. The Lakers desperately need more scoring from somewhere else. Because look, LeBron and AD didn't look phenomenal in the second game in particular. Now, LeBron played incredibly down the stretch against the Clippers, and AD is the biggest mismatch for the Clippers in that potential series, and he would probably average 35 in that series. But the Lakers desperately need somebody. They barely cracked 100 in their first game, only scored 92 points against the Raptors. And look, they're going to play... Listen, they're going to play the Clippers. They're going to have to beat the Clippers at some point, who have the 2 best perimeter defenders in the NBA. And then you're either going to play Boston, who has 2 really solid perimeter defenders, Toronto, and we just saw what the Lakers had, the gauntlet they went through against the Raptors, or you're going to have Milwaukee, who's far and away the best defensive team in basketball. And they did not look good against them. Did not look good. They need scoring to come from somewhere else. Badly. Against the Raptors, LeBron had 20 points, but AD was in 35 minutes was 14 points, 2 of 7 field goal. Kyle Kuzma had 16 points, and you had 12 from Waiters and 11 from Caruso, but when LeBron and AD are only scoring 34 combined, Danny Green was 0 of 7 from the field, JaVale McGee took 3 shots, KCP was 2 of 7 from the field for 5 points. That's not going to cut it against any team that's got a good defense. And most of these great, it's not like Kawhi and PG are untalented on the offensive end, right? And it's not like Giannis isn't talented on the offensive end. It's not like Toronto doesn't have guys like Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry who can get buckets on the offensive end. It's not like these defensive teams are one-dimensional. They're great defensive teams and they're really solid offensive teams. And when you have so much pressure on those 2 guys, it's hard to score enough points. Especially when a team, and every team has the guy to guard LeBron now. Every team that has a chance of winning an NBA title, at least. In LA, you've got 2 of them. The Clippers, you've got 2 guys that can guard them. In the West, that's probably the only team that really has a guy that you're feeling really, really strongly about guarding him. Let's go through the standings one more time here. Let's take a look. So in Denver, there's, you got Paul Millsaps. There's not a whole lot in Denver. Not a whole lot in Utah, not a whole lot in Houston, not a whole lot in OKC. But here's the point. In LA, the Clippers have them, and they got 2 of them. And then in the East, you've got the Raptors, who have Siakam. Chris Boucher has been pretty good on the defensive end. But you got Siakam and OG Anunoby. You've got guys to put on LeBron. You got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in Boston. And then you've got Giannis, Chris Middleton in Milwaukee. And it would probably be Chris Middleton, considering Giannis would probably be tasked with guarding AD. If LeBron's not playing well, if he's only scoring 20 points a game, that's not fair to LeBron, but you're going to need more than what the Lakers got this weekend for the Lakers to seriously contend for a title. And we'll get to the playoffs and LeBron will be a different animal like he always is. Will be a different player. But the question is still worth asking. The Raptors look impressive. The Clippers are going to be really tough to beat in the playoffs. They have great, their elite perimeter defense. They're going to get some of that scoring back when Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell come back. And so I'm very not worried about them. They looked really good. They missed their guys, their bench pieces against the Lakers. It's just that simple. And Harrell, who I'm assuming would be the guy who would play a lot of minutes on AD. They just didn't have him. He had Zubac and Zubac. You've got, Joakim Noah isn't exactly scary for AD. You know what I mean? But they'll get those guys back. And Montrezl Harrell isn't exactly scary either. But he's certainly tougher and certainly more for the challenge than Zubac and Joakim Noah are. Why is Zion even in the bubble? Will somebody tell me? Why is Zion in the bubble if he's only going to play 14 minutes a game? And clearly the Pelicans aren't interested in trying to get that playing game. Like, why is he there? Like, I don't even disagree with it necessarily. It's certainly not worth playing him, 39 minutes a game to try and get a playing game. That's fine. Like, I have no issue with that, to be honest with you. But then why are we risking, why do we bring Zion to the bubble for him to play 14 minutes a game? He's a freakish athlete. He's got 5 rebounds in 2 games. He didn't have any on opening night against the Jazz. Apart from Rudy Gobert, it's just a bunch of guards. Why is he in the bubble if he's only going to play 14 minutes a game? What's the point? He's not making an impact on the games. Clearly, they're just not interested in getting that playing game. Because if he plays 20 minutes, they win the Jazz game probably. They'd have lost to the Clippers, but everybody loses to the Clippers. Why is he playing 14 minutes? What's the point? If you're not going to bring him in and really make a run for the 8th seed for that playing game and try to get into the playoffs as an 8th seed, why did you bring him? If it's all about resting him and making sure you're very conservative with him and not rushing him back in any way, if health is the biggest influencer on how many minutes he's playing, then why did you bring him to a bubble where he could get COVID-19? That doesn't make any sense to me. If he's going to be there, you might as well play him. And there are other things, like he needs to be more in shape, and there are just things that you would like to think he would have figured out over the 4 months where he had nothing else to do. But that's a different discussion. If we're playing 14 minutes, why are we here? What are we doing what are we doing with Zion if he's just going to play 14 minutes? Why is he here? So those are my takeaways. That's the first weekend of the NBA season. Got more today. It's awesome as those seeding games roll on. Coming up next, we'll talk about the Pac-12 and the Players Tribune article the Pac-12 football players wrote with their demands basically for if they're going to play in fall camps and in games this fall. We'll do that next on the Jmull Show on 110sportsmedia.com. Welcome back to the Jmull Show on a Monday. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day, whenever you might be watching, since we are recording this one today rather than doing it live. OneTenSportsMedia.com. If you want to head over to our Twitch channel and follow that, so you know that when we go live, that's twitch.tv/110sports. But thank you so much for making us a part of your day. What I want to talk about now is the Players Tribune article that the Pac-12 athletes wrote, basically with some demands if they're going to participate in fall sports, like one-time transfer without penalty, being able to profit off of name, image, and likeness, the creation of civic engagement task force, and using endowments to protect less profitable sports. And then, of course, you have your COVID-19 issues and your COVID-19 concerns, since players being on campuses for football has clearly been somewhat of an issue. This is an incredible type of leverage that these players are putting on those who run the Pac-12, because the football players are the reason that running the Pac-12 is such a lucrative business. And it's the reason that all of these other sports, in the Pac-12, that's not quite as, because you have, there's some Stanford sports that definitely make money when most of those sports don't. Meaning, Stanford swimming, Stanford golf, Stanford soccer. Stanford competes at a high level in a lot of things. But for the most part, those smaller sports, they talked about wanting endowments for those smaller sports so that there's no eliminating of different programs as a result of COVID-19, as a result of these things. So basically, they want it to be ensured that that's not going to happen to these other sports programs before they play. They want name, image, and likeness. And, this is, it'll be interesting, to see how serious they are, because a lot of these things aren't going to be able to happen fast enough. I mean, we're talking about August 3rd right now. It's August 3rd, and football begins at the end of the month. At least it's supposed to. These aren't the kind of things that happen in 50 days. There's a lot more that goes into it. So we're going to see how serious if they just need to see progress, if they need to see promises, what do they need to see to be satisfied? Because there's just a lot of this, there just isn't time to actually put together prior to when the football season is supposed to start. What do they need to see before they agree? Are they going to go prior to, is the response from the Pac-12 going to be public or private? What are we going to learn about what the Pac-12 thinks of this Players Tribune article? How much leverage do they think the college football players have? All of these are questions that we'll learn the answers to in the coming days. But this is yet another example. And how does it impact college football? Is it going to spread? Are the Big 12 players going to demand something like this? Big 10, SEC, ACC, AAC, MAC. Who else is going to decide that, listen, we're going to put our foot down? This is another example of player empowerment era in college athletics that are started with the push for civic equality, racial equality in this country. It started with that, and now all of a sudden we're not going to sit by and let these college athletes are saying, we're not going to sit by and let these people make millions of dollars off of us. We're going to use that leverage because we're very, very valuable, and we know that we're very valuable, and we're no longer going to sit by and let somebody else profit off our value. We're no longer going to be taken advantage of. We're no longer going to be walked all over. We're no longer going to feel like the inferior to whoever the coach is, whoever the people are that are running programs, conferences, college football, who are actually making the money off of this business. I mean, can you imagine 10 years ago if this would have happened? I mean, this is something I never would have imagined would have happened. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago that the extent of players speaking out about this was, Nigel Hayes, former Wisconsin basketball player, going on, being there for a Wisconsin college football game day, and he's standing there with a sign that says college athletes should be paid. Or was this Venmo or something? You know, there was a Venmo there saying he needed money for something. You get my point, is that used to be for the extent of it, and there certainly wasn't momentum like this. The momentum that we have here is striking. It really is. It's way different than anything we've ever had before. Way different. And we'll see what this actually does, what this actually means, because this is real pressure. And if they're there's no reason to suggest they're bluffing, but what if the Pac-12 just sort of says, okay, this is what's going to happen, take it or leave it? It would be a really bad move on the part of the Pac-12 to say, we're just going to take your scholarships away if you don't play. But at the same time, then it gets a lot easier said than done. So we'll see. I think it's a fantastic part of what college athletics are becoming, that players feel like they're empowered, and they feel like they have the leverage, and they feel like they should be respected, and their voices should be heard. It's a beautiful part of the new era of college athletics. We'll see what that actually means in the response that we get from, because this is the first time, there have been players and individuals, but this is a united front of Pac-12 football players. That's a lot of leverage, and more leverage than anybody else has really had. Especially when every single, they're not going to make any, the Pac-12 makes no money then, no football money, because they're only playing conference games. So what do you think? What's going to happen? What's the result of this very public use of their leverage as the athletes and as the men responsible for the business, how lucrative the business of college football is for the Pac-12. But we'll see. Yoenis Cespedes, he ghosted on the Mets. Ghosted. He said, he didn't even say see ya. He said, I'm going to pack up my stuff quietly. I'm going to pack up my stuff, and I'm going to leave. Mets send security to Cespedes' hotel room at the team hotel, and he's not there, and no trace of him being there is there. He's taken his stuff, he's dipped out, and he's now, and then halfway through their game against the Braves, he said, oh yeah, by the way, I'm opting out of the rest of the season due to COVID-19 issues. Listen, I don't blame him at all. Don't blame him at all. It is not a move that I find unintelligent. Now, his means of which, the way he told them, the way he let them know, iffy. I wouldn't have done it that way. But I can't say that I wouldn't have opted out. And then you have other guys like Lorenzo Cain, who is the Brewers' Gold Glove center fielder, who said, you know what, I'm out. This is bad. You had the Miami Marlins second baseman, Isan Diaz, say, I'm gone. And this is going to happen. This is going to keep happening until this actually gets under wraps. That players are going to continue to opt out because it's starting to make less and less sense. I mean, it has made less and less sense. But now, you've had over 100 cases. You've had over 100 cases in Major League Baseball since June 27th. Relatively speaking, there aren't all that many people in Major League Baseball. Relatively speaking. This is both Manfred and the players have some blame here for how out of hand Major League Baseball has gotten. The players have to be better in terms of just using their minds. Apparently, the Marlins, when they were on their trip to Atlanta, for their scrimmage, they were like out and about and very lenient with their very leisure with the protocol. And that just can't happen. You have to have some self-control. You have to have some discipline to just not do that kind of thing. because that's really annoying, right? I mean, there should be, Manfred should have had protocol. Him and his office should have had protocol so that it's not a text group chat deciding if the Marlins will play the Phillies. That can't happen either. Manfred has to have. How is there a 100-page health and safety document for Major League Baseball and there's not protocol on if multiple people get test positive for COVID-19, is a game played? What's the threshold? Because clearly, if multiple players test positive, there's probably more players that are going to test positive in the same clubhouse. It's probably going to happen. So how does that? How do you even let that happen? How do you not write that legislature? It baffles me. It really does, and it's yet another. And the fact that Manfred so publicly calls out the MLBPA is just ridiculous, and is a leaders in this country. What we do as leaders nowadays is we blame people for our mistakes. That's what we do. We blame people for things that are 100% our fault. And that's what Manfred did. Now, the players had some fault here. But Manfred can't, releasing a statement making it sound like they're the only reasons that this is going so wrong is beyond me. There's just no way. There's no way you have the audacity to do that. But Manfred had the audacity to do it. I'm impressed. I really am. I'm impressed. Because it was a bold move, for sure. Bold. We'll see. I'm really shocked that it's Monday morning at 10:40 a.m. Central Standard Time, and we still have baseball. I'm really surprised. I thought it was going, basically the entire Cardinals team has COVID-19 now. I was really, really surprised. I'm really surprised. And unless something's happened, and I'm in a internetless house right now. So unless something drastic has changed in the last 30 minutes, however long we've been chatting, baseball continues on today, and that's really not something that I was expecting to be the case when there was an outbreak with the Marlins. There's been an outbreak with the Cardinals. I'm really surprised that we're still doing that. But we are, and Major League Baseball is going to continue on. But both sides, both Manfred and the players, need to get better if baseball is going to finish this season in any meaningful way. Coming up next, we'll do FYI and get out of here for the day. You're watching the Jmull Show on 110sportsmedia.com. Welcome back to the Jmull Show on a Monday, wrapping up the show here with some FYI. Thank you so much for joining us here on a Monday. For your information, the WWE superstar, the mega star in the entertainment industry, Mr. Ballers himself, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, is now a part owner of the XFL. It's props to the XFL, man. They keep figuring out ways to keep going. You would think that, something like this would just kind of put them in their tracks, stop them in their tracks. But hey, The Rock is swimming in it. The Rock got plenty of money. Plenty of money. More than enough. So I'm impressed to get somebody like The Rock, who doesn't seem like an unintelligent man, to buy in is impressive and influential. So The Rock, FYI, for your information, The Rock is now a part owner of the XFL. The PGA Championship, the first major in over a year, begins on Thursday at TPC Harding Park in San Francisco. That's going to be awesome. Can't wait for that. It's going to be interesting to see how that looks without fans. Something about TPC Southwind. I guess it just might be because I've been there and I've seen the WGC FedEx happen in person. It might have something to do with that, but it just looked empty, and I felt it just. I was more aware that it was empty than I usually am. We'll see how Harding Park does. The last time it held a PGA Tour event was when it hosted the match play, I think in 2016, maybe 2016 or 17, an event that Rory McIlroy won, actually. But PGA Championship, TPC Harding Park this week, starts on Thursday. I'm pumped. I'm excited for Major Golf. I want to see how intense it is. Is it equally as intense? Is it close to as intense as a major championship usually is? As we get close to the U.S. Open, which the U.S. Open isn't all that far away, and neither the Masters in November as well. TJ Warren scored 53 points. That's ridiculous. That's way more points than he'll ever score again. But he was phenomenal. Sabrina Ionescu, unfortunately. Sabrina Ionescu, ankle sprain in Game 3. We talked about it, 33.7 assists, 7 rebounds in her second game. Ankle sprain, she'll miss a month in her third game, which really sucks. It really does, and there's no other way to put it. And prayers to Sabrina and that, the ankle heals, that there's nothing more lingering than just a sprained ankle. Let it heal, and she'll be good to go, because there isn't a more important player for a league in this country than Sabrina is for the WNBA, and for her to be injury ridden, God forbid, would really be awful, just for her as a person, of course, and then for the league as well, to miss out on such an incredible, on an inevitably incredible career if she's healthy. So hopefully she comes back just as strong after that month with the ankle sprain. And then, of course, tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, I guess let's do August 4th, 11 a.m. Eastern, and August 4th, 1 p.m. Eastern. You got Touchline Talk to start the day with Josh Doring, and then Chris Brown, Around the Bases. Amazingly, he's still got baseball to talk about. I'm sure he'll touch on everything that's happened since he was last with us on Thursday. It was a busy week in baseball, and he'll break it all down for you at 1 p.m. Eastern on August 4th, Tuesday, August 4th. I believe that's all we have for you. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day whenever you might be watching this. If you're watching this prior to Wednesday, August 5th, then I'll be back Wednesday, August 5th at 110sportsmedia.com/live, twitch.tv/110sports with the Jmull Show. If you're watching right then head over to 110sportsmedia.com. Check out the live show on Wednesday. But thank you so much for taking the time to watch the Jmull Show here today. And I'll see you on August 5th at 11 a.m. Eastern at 110sportsmedia.com.